Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about letting someone go. So let's get into it. So the question in question was a little bit of a story. Hi Frederick, I hope this is the place to ask you a question and that you will answer them. I have been a team lead for 3 months. I have one team member and I hired him. When I hired him, I was under the impression that he had 2.5 years of experience. Also from the point that we, also from the point that we hired and until he started to work, he had about a month. Okay, so yeah, so he had I have 2.5 years of experience. Okay, he told me that he had bought an Angular course and he is learning at home. I have to give him kudos for that. So when he started to work, it was near the end of the version. It was a little busy. I tried to give him all the time I could, but as the weeks went by, we understood that he might have lied, and he doesn't have 2.5 years of experience. We got to the point. We got to the point where we will have to let him go. Now I know that this can happen in life. It happened to me when I had a little baby at home. I know that he has two small kids, but I'm very sorry to do so. The main question is how do I, without offending him or being an how to do it without offending him or being an asshole. A little about myself. I have been a programmer for 12 years and this is my first role as a team leader. Right. So yeah, this sucks. There's a lot of stuff that sucks, unfortunately, in the world. Uh, and I've been here as well, where you have to get rid of someone because of reasons. It can be anything from that they won't adjust to that they don't have the skills to that they are causing like problems or so forth and so forth. And so this is something that I try my absolute best to do because for me, well, I don't know what to say. For some people, this is a very emotional thing, and for some people, I think that well, I don't really think in terms of people trying to be bad. I think it's more a question of is this a person that like is like, people like to dehumanize other people, and they tend to have this idea that if someone's misbehaving or something is causing an issue or so forth, or someone is not pulling their weight, that there's some malicious intent here, and that you get a lot of emotions and anger around some people. Because I've worked with people as well, guys who are like, I don't like them at all. I've had managers that I don't like either, and I've been fired as well, like from by people who I thought were like to the point where like they acted in an absolutely atrocious way. But when I reflect on it, I always come back to the same thing. And the vast majority of times when something like this happens, it's not usually because someone is intentionally being malicious. It can be anything from that they're just stupid to that the situation and this is literally the best way they could figure out how to deal with the situation and so forth. Because the sad fact is that if we could control all the things, we would, and you wouldn't have to make this sort of have this sort of situation. So my mantra that I sort of adopted in order to deal with a lot of the problems that I have with things that are difficult is that I say that I try to do what is necessary to get results with the minimum harm done. And that I think is the best anyone can do, because the reality is that if you and this is sort of like the sort of I think that that's an idealistic thing. It's a sort of the it's somewhere in the middle of the different like viewpoints, where you have people who are bleeding hearts, people who try to, sacrifice everything for emotion and so forth, which in turn causes other sorts of suffering. It's just that this is less emotionally crippling for people to deal with. Uh, just as a mother who is always nice to her kids can't expect their kids are not going to turn out well if you're always like, if any crying, it makes you collapse. But at the same time, if you're like a really really strict parent, or if you're very strict in policy, or like basically cruel, that's another extreme that isn't good. And so I think that making progress while minimizing harm is like, that's my sweet spot. And for you, that's how I deal with it. Basically, it comes down to that there is no nice way to tell someone that they're gonna get sacked or fired or like so forth. The best thing you can do is to, in essence, I would say you take a page, because if you don't want to see masters of giving bad news, you should look at some of the politicians of the world. What they will do, which I think is it's usually like the really good ones, is to adopt the most neutral language that you can. And you will see this in managers as well. Sometimes you take it too far and it becomes almost robotic, where like you're basically just reading line by line from some prepared statement, which is not a good thing. I think I think that you should add a little bit of genuine touch to what you're saying. But when I say neutral language, I basically mean that don't try to like pull up a bunch of times that they fucked up. Don't try to make them feel bad. Don't try to like emotionally attack them, anything like that. Guys, I've been in situations where I've had conversations with people that I truly despise, and I think that they are horrible in many many ways. But when it comes to being professional and so forth, as I said, I don't view these people as bad people. I view them as someone who I will not get along with, and they don't deserve me, by spewing bile on top of them in an already harsh situation, because it doesn't bring anything. The only thing it's going to do is that it's going to make them feel worse, and it's pretty telling about you if you feel better from it. If you take pleasure from hurting people that you may or may not like or don't think that they're so good, etc., etc., it's think about it, sort of why you feel that way, because I usually don't feel all that much. I don't take pleasure in making people feel bad, even when I might feel warranted to do so. So all you can really do here is to try to act with empathy, empathy and honor, like act in an honorable fashion. Sit them down, have a conversation with them, and explain, as I said, in the most neutral way you can, that unfortunately you're going to have to let them go, because the company is in a situation where we need to see certain results, and you are unfortunately not producing those results, assuming of course you don't have like some way for you to give them a work plan and so forth. You can delay this, of course, and like there are many ways that you can like try to see, like create a plan for how they should improve and so forth. But if it gets to the point where you actually have to do this thing, then try to make your focus that relaying the information should be as neutral as possible. And then once the information is out there, when you've told them basically, from then on out, it's basically all about making the process of transitioning, phasing them out as easy as humanly possible. And I think that that's sort of what I was saying. Like, you have to do this bad thing because it's necessary. Unfortunately, if they were producing more, you were a different company. If the situation was anything besides what it is, you wouldn't have the situation. But now you have it. So the best you can do is let them know in a nice way, and then minimize the blast, like minimize the harm that you can do. And unfortunately, even though they might have kids and so forth, that doesn't really factor into it. Because it's the same as you were saying, like you have been here as well, guys. Unfortunately, that is the reality that you find yourself in. If it's I tell people this all the time, the vast majority of people who are yelling for us to take on like enormous amounts of welfare and so forth, fundamentally it comes down to resources, input, output. And I'm very sorry to say that the vast majority of people who have a bleeding heart usually have that bleeding heart for the only reason that they are in a luxury position where they don't have to compromise on something that is very dear to them. But it's very difficult if you're a struggling company, or if you're someone poor on the street or so forth, to be very, very open to the idea that other people can weighs the situation down or can perform. Because for some people, if you have someone who's unproductive in a company, it might be the death to the of the entire company. And it doesn't, I know people love hating on companies for doing this, and some, I'm not trying to say that they don't do this, because there's tons of shitty company policies and shitty companies who really do try to just maximize their own profits and so forth. But that's not always the case. In some cases, you are in a situation where someone is unproductive. You cannot keep them because they can't perform. And in a really harsh situation, it's unfortunate, but it's them, you or them. That's really what it comes down to. And you are now in a leadership position. This is one of those times where you're going to have to step up and do something that most people don't feel all that comfortable doing. So what I want you to take away from this is basically that firing people sucks. Usually, it's not a good thing whatsoever, and it's never easy, or it gets easier with time, because you start to sort of realize, I hope at the very least, you will realize with time that it's the same problem that you have with most things in society. If we could plan and foresee everything ahead of time, and we were better people, we were smarter, we were all of these sorts of things, we wouldn't need to have wars and criminals and all of this sort of problems that we have of the world. But we do have them because we're limited, we're flawed humans. And so I suggest that you adopt your own mantra. Mine, you can take it for free. Do what is necessary to get the results needed with minimum harm done. All things considered, at all times. Don't try to be unnecessarily greedy or cruel or anything like that. Try to get to the point where productive, meaningful things can happen without harming people, without trying to act without empathy or any type of honor or or ethics or things like that. And I think that most people can get behind that, I hope. And then try to choose the most neutral language that you can when you communicate with people who you're going to give bad news to. You can do it in many ways. There are many people who will be able to teach you sort of how to avoid saying things that sounds very hurtful, etc., etc. Take your emotions out of it as much as humanly possible when you do this. And then once you have done that, take on the role of someone who's just there to sort of guide the person through this very difficult process. That's how I would suggest that you do it. And then how the developer reacts is it's their business. And as I said, although what is happening is tragic, all you can really do here is to treat them as fairly as you can and make the process as easy as possible. Because I'm guessing that if you could change the situation, if you had enough money to train them, or if they were quote unquote better at what they did, you wouldn't have this problem. It's a cliche, but it's not personal, it's business. Have a great day.